Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv, Wolok, my partner in crime, Vasili Gianarakos. Vasili, what's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Hey, everything's going good, Yariv. Another week back at it. Another week watching Flyers hockey. How have you been doing this week, buddy?
Hockey-wise, could be better. Overall in life, pretty good, man. Thank you.
Oh, same here, same here.
Yeah. And so we have a special guest for the evening, something that, we were kind of trying to been planning for a little bit. And shout out to Jamie Baskow for essentially setting this up. We have the father of a recently drafted Philadelphia Flyer prospect, Ethan Samson, Shawn Samson. Nice to meet you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to meet you guys as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Excited to have you on. Again, most people who are listening to this probably have not seen Ethan play. Again, he's in the juniors league, in WHL. So it's not something that most Philadelphia fans have experienced watching. And even of the name, the Prince George Cougars, it's not one that's probably on most people's list. But to be honest with you, from what I've noticed, Ethan has kind of developed quite a bit over the past few years into somewhat of a notable prospect for the Philadelphia Flyers. And with the assets that he's bringing, it's somebody I think we look forward to see, trying to rise up the ranks here. So as Ethan's father, how does it feel to have a son who's been drafted and, has potential to be an NHL hockey player?
Well, it's a great honor to, when your son gets drafted. I think every dad can admit that's something they always hope that will happen for their kids. And, the fact he was drafted, that's just one step closer. So, I know he has a lot of hard work to go still. It's just, one more step in his journey of where he wants to go of playing pro hockey, whether it's in the NHL, in the European hockey, wherever it is, that's his goal, is to play pro hockey. So to see him get that first step, I'm happy for him. Couldn't be happier. That's absolute what we wanted for him.
Did you anticipate that he was going to get drafted, or were you not sure?
You know what? We weren't sure. You just never know. I mean, the NHL draft, let's be honest, it's a long shot to get drafted. Mm-hmm. So though we hoped, we had our fingers crossed, we hope, but you just never know. Even though you talk to teams along the way, you just don't know what's going to happen. So the fact we were definitely excited for that. Did we know he would for sure? Absolutely not. It was just a hope, and it, worked out. Philly called his name.
Yeah, it's probably an awesome feeling. So I guess let's go back to the roots here. Vasili, you had a question about growing up. You want to ask that question? I don't want to.
Yeah, sure. So I just wanted to know, Shawn. I mean, were you a hockey fan growing up? Did you play the sport at all, or how did you kind of get involved with hockey and then pass that along through to your son Ethan there?
As a kid, I played a lot of street hockey. Probably 6 days a week, I played street hockey. I always, a bit of a funny story is I always asked if I could play hockey every year. And with a family of 4 kids, it was just never in the budget to play hockey. So as I got older, I decided, I was probably 20, and I decided I want to learn to skate. I want to play hockey because it's what my dream sport is.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we rented the ice at 2 a.m. every Saturday night. I learned to skate. A year later, I joined the league. And halfway through, I was playing defense. And then I decided I wanted to try goalie, because I grew up playing goalie for soccer for so many years. I tried that. I loved it. I stuck to it. And a couple years later, I was playing Div 1 men's league, and I've been playing ever since. And I'm now 50 years old.
Wow, that's awesome. So that's obviously something, I mean, you passed on probably to Ethan over the years. And I'm a bit biased. I played all my life as well, and I was a goalie. So to hear you, went to the goalie position, that just makes total sense to me. I understand that. Best position to play.
It is, absolutely. And for Ethan, I always said if I ever had kids and they wanted to play hockey, I would do everything I can for them to play, because that was my dream that I never got to do as a child. So definitely when he was 6 months old, first thing he had was a hockey stick in his hand by his choice, and he never put it down, essentially.
That's awesome. And it's an expensive sport. To your point, it's not one of those sports where you just really need a ball in the field or, a net in the ball. It's like you need the equipment, you need the net, you need the puck, you need the whole thing. And, for me, like I grew up playing street hockey too, and never had a chance really to play ice hockey. And it's always one of those things where it's like, I don't know if it was out of the budget, but you have to take it seriously to invest in it, essentially.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let me ask you a little bit about your son, because this is something Vasili and I were talking about before we went on. And I just kind of want to get the record straight with this one, because I don't really know. Just like kind of looking online, and I looked him up a little bit on NHL 22 as well, and just kind of looking at his height. He was listed in NHL 22 as 5'11". His draft year, he was listed as 6'1", and now he's listed as 6'3", close to 200 pounds. Is there any record here of him kind of growing or have this kind of like late growth spurt, or is that just like all the heights are off?
No, all the heights are off. He's probably been 6'3" for the last year or two.
Oh, okay.
I think what happens is the different leagues that he's been in when he was, back to when he played academy hockey, essentially, those heights and weights just seem to follow you. So unless you actually have them change it, it doesn't change. But he is 6'3", and he's probably in the 190 range. I know it's hard to keep weight on during the season, so I'd say somewhere in that range. He's in the 190-ish.
Well, I gotta say, for being 6'3", 190, especially at 18 years old, the size is quite impressive, right? For a kid,
and he's a great skater too. For his size as well. So
yeah, absolutely. And just looking at his stats, I just want to name him out loud here. So in his first season with Prince George, he had 2 goals, 5 assists, and 7 points in 61 games. Second year, obviously, COVID somewhat related. So 22 games, 1 goal, 11 assists, 12 points, which is very admirable, especially for a 17-year-old. And then this year, breakout year, in 46 games, he's got 9 goals, 18 assists, 27 points. Yeah. And I got to say that those are really impressive numbers. What do you think kind of contributed to Ethan's growth there on the ice? Because, I mean, if he continues on this pace, he's looking at a 40-point pace over the season. And then I assume maybe he'll play another year at WHL and then, probably make his way to the AHL. That's really nice progress for a prospect, especially one, I believe it was the 6th round, if I remember correctly. Yep. 6th round, 174th pick. So that type of progress, Jamie was saying before we got started, the Flyers are usually pretty good at picking in the later rounds. And, I think they got like kind of a late gem here, a guy who can definitely play a pro game. What do you think contributed to that?
I think it's confidence. I think each year he just grew in confidence, got a little stronger each year, a little more physical, and his game just started to come around to kind of, blend in with the guys his age. So I would say a lot of it is all confidence.
Yeah, and that makes sense too. Like once, you're a player and you're seeing yourself progress in your own game and just being able to do things that maybe, you'd have troubles with before, and then building on that, you kind of know that, okay, I'm getting in the right direction, and then I can start playing, the best I can play and the best hockey I can play. And just, to go off Yariv's question there, Shawn, had another one here for you. What do you think Ethan's best asset would be as a player at the moment, if you could pick one out maybe?
If I pick one out right now, I'd probably say he's a workhorse.
Okay.
Because, he gets the opportunity to play in every situation, whether it's PK, power play, 5-on-5, last minute of the game. I think he's averaging 30 minutes a game in ice time. So really I would say him being a workhorse, and that's what he loves to do. He just loves to be out there.
Yeah, and that's always great too, because the more you play as a player, the more opportunities, like you were saying, you have a chance to grow your game in all different areas and facets of it. So that's really impressive for him, and good on him, for taking all that stuff on and extra duties on the ice.
Yeah, it's great to watch for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure it's amazing. So, as a hockey dad, did you guys hire people like as he was developing? Like, did he have a specialist to work with one-on-one, or was he kind of just making a way through by himself?
Yeah, we didn't really do any one-on-one stuff. Most of his stuff was playing winter hockey, and then he played spring hockey. So he's had great coaches along the way, whether it was in spring hockey or in winter hockey. He's definitely had some good coaching along the way. So a lot of the credit goes to them. He put in the work, but they had the knowledge of what to teach him. So it definitely went a long way for him. And as well as he's had a lot of great opportunities too when he's played hockey. Like, as a young age, he got to play in a lot of big tournaments, which, in Canada, they're big. The brick tournament, when they're 10 years old is a big one where, there's
heard of that.
Pennsylvania team is there every year. So getting to play in something like that. And then there's also a big one in Quebec where they play at
the Quebec Pee-wee.
Quebec Pee-wee tournament. So he got to do that twice because he made it as a first year and then he got to go as a second year. So going to things like that, I think, has been a huge help for him.
Did he get any attention at those tournaments?
Not really. I don't think at that age, if they did, none that I knew of. So I think at that age, it's just kids are, out there playing, having fun. There's ones who stands out, but nobody really comes and talks to you as a parent about it.
Yeah. Did the Flyers reach out to you as, they got closer to the draft? Is that like a conversation that they had with you at any point?
I never talked to anybody.
That's awesome.
Ethan talked to, they would talk to Ethan. I'm not sure who all he talked to. That was kind of his thing where, he would do these Zoom interviews and things like that with different teams, but that was all on him. So I'm not even sure who all he talked to be honest.
Okay. Are there plans to increase his training by any chance? I don't know if that's something you would know, but like I said, it's going to be a big year for him this year and the next year even bigger. Yeah,
this year we did talk about that. So a little story last year, when he would do his training, he would go in the morning, he would do his ice time, he would do his dry land training, and then he'd go to work. He said, no, you have to have a job. You want a car, you need, so you need to work if you're going to be home. And so he went to work every day after he worked out. So we decided this year that we're just going to let him, work on training so he can go to the gym, he can do his ice time, any extra training he can get, he's going to take advantage of it. So he knows he's got a lot of work to do still.
That's awesome. I love that you told him that he still had to work. Because I think it's a mindset, right, of like always working hard and never taking your foot off the pedal, and when you apply the pressure on the people, sometimes it's kind of what they need because, when he gets to that next level, that it's not going to get any easier. That's for sure.
No, it's definitely going to get harder.
Yeah, it's going to get harder.
I mean, the harder you work too, you can reap the benefits from that hard work. So obviously the more work you put in, the more you can grow as a player. So I'm sure that's going to happen, for Ethan coming up in the future and through this great season, and then going into next season. And just another question here. Did you and Ethan ever discuss, like games or any sort of game players? Have you ever asked you for any like sort of advice and things like that?
Yeah, usually after the game, I always leave him alone because, he'll either be in a good mood or a bad mood, depending how the game went. But, I mean, him and I have talked where, consistency, that's something he needs to work on, is make sure he just is consistent on how he plays.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. So I'm going to steal one of your questions here because I like this question. Did he always play D? Is that something that he kind of made a point to be like, I'm going to be a defenseman. That's my mindset. It's a very physical position. Or was it like I started off as forward and I kind of realized that I like defense more over time?
Yeah, no, when he was 5, his first year of hockey, he was playing defense and he's never left from defense. So he played lacrosse. He started playing when he was 4 and right away he went to defense and lacrosse at 4 and played defense all through lacrosse. And then the same with hockey. There's a couple times where he would want to play goalie. And as a goalie, I would say, I don't know. And, it's not really for you because his temperament. So he would try it once in a while just as a treat. He would get to go try goalie once, but defense is what he's always been drawn to for whatever reason.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask how come he didn't try goaltender considering that was like kind of your position. I was wondering why he kind of went forward, but I think the temperament is probably correct. Again, not stating this about you, but they do say goalies are a little bit crazy, right? Too.
Yeah. I can attest to that. So.
Which I get. Well,
we're a little off.
Yeah. Well, you
want to just stand in front of a puck getting fired at you like 80 miles an hour or something. So, you got to be a little excited to, to stand in front of danger there. But
yeah. Absolutely. So like growing up, did you guys have a specific team that you followed? Did you guys watch an NHL team together? Did you grow up like, Canucks fan or?
Yes. I'm a Vancouver Canucks fan. When he was little, he was too. But then he slowly changed and kind of drew himself to Edmonton for a while and Chicago. And, And then he kind of just likes everybody now. He's not really a one team guy. I guess now he's a Philadelphia fan.
Of course.
We can't forget that. But
yeah.
I mean, growing up, I mean, he was a Canuck fan when he was young, but then from there, he kind of had his own teams that he liked for different reasons. Usually it was players, why he liked them.
Nice. Yeah, I hear that quite a bit, actually. I have some friends who are like kind of high level hockey players. And I feel like as you get closer to the sport, probably closer to like playing with, I'm sure you played against some guys who are in the NHL and stuff like that. You start to more just appreciate the sport more than the actual like NHL, right? Like you just become a fan of just watching hockey and, appreciating the sport altogether.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how he is. He just enjoys the sport. So he'll follow a team because of a player or some players, but he's kind of has his own thing of how he enjoys watching hockey.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think? What do you think is going to be Ethan's like number one asset to making the NHL? Do you think, like you mentioned, his his mindset and work ethic, consistency? Do you think that there's like anything about him that's kind of like his X factor, like outside of like being a workhorse? Like, is there anything about him that you think like in his game that has him stand out above the others?
I think everybody has their own, thing that makes them a little better. For Ethan, I think when he plays physical on defense, I think it really helps his game. And that's what part of his consistency is he needs to be physical more often. Mm-hmm. But there's not really, anything that stands out that he's, stellar at. He's got to work at all aspects of the game still for sure.
That's a big thing, though. I mean, the physicality you brought up, right? Because in the NHL, I mean, since the lockout and the new NHL in general, I mean, you don't see that as much, or people being as physical. So that's a thing that like teams target, and I think it's something probably the Flyers were looking at, thinking, hey, this is a steal for us in the 6th round. We can grab this kid who's going to be really physical for us when he starts to play in the AHL and then move up from there, right?
Yeah,
so that's great.
And I think that his physical game is, I think, one of his, when he plays physical, that's when he's playing his best.
So let me ask you about this, since we're talking about physicality. I mean, maybe this is a more vulnerable question, but, do you have any concerns about like injuries and stuff like that? Like, we've seen kids come up, with a lot of promise, struggle through injury. Obviously, God forbid something happens to them, but, does that concern you as a parent that like, he'll go too far, or that he'll, have like a bad week that, becomes really bad? Is that something you think about?
I don't really think about it. I mean, I know it's part of the game, but Ethan's been pretty lucky as far as injuries. Mm-hmm. He's had one injury where it's kept him out for a while when he broke his elbow in the Quebec tournament. And other than that, I mean, it takes a lot to keep him down. He's broken fingers and not missed a shift. He stayed out there and continues the game, gets it splinted up after. We've made many trips to the emergency after games, for cuts and breaks, but he's pretty healthy that he doesn't really get a lot of injuries. So knock on wood, I don't jinx him, but I think he's missed one game in, almost 3 years in the WHL. And so far, so good.
Does he have anybody that he models his game after? Like somebody that maybe you guys watched growing up that maybe he appreciated more, you appreciated more, that, kind of took a liking to?
Well, he's a Pietrangelo fan.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, he's high on him. He really likes his game, and I think he would like to be that kind of player.
Nobody from Vancouver?
No one from Vancouver. And he even played with one of the Vancouver Canucks going back a few years with one of the players' sons, and he still wasn't his favorite player. He just never was.
That's awesome. Kind of modest. Well, I think he does have a lot of character, and Vasili brought this up already. Like, it seems like a type of guy that could fit a mold inside of the Philadelphia Flyers organization, if he does make, or if and when he makes the let's at least say the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. Do you guys plan on kind of coming over here, watching him play in the AHL at some point, and hopefully he makes the NHL someday? Do you guys plan on kind of making your way over here to watch him play?
Absolutely. If he ever makes an AHL game there, I'll be there for sure to watch that. Yeah. Even in, if he makes a camp this year just to go to camp, I'll probably try to make it out there just to take advantage of that experience, because it may only come the one time.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, be there for support too. I'm sure it's going to be way more than one time though. I mean, he's doing a great job in the WHL. So lots of promise, obviously.
Yeah, I can only hope, but you just never know. So take advantage of it while you're there.
I like your attitude towards it, because it's, as obviously Vasili and I have both been watching hockey a long time, and you have too. I mean, you see so many guys come into the NHL or, get drafted, and, sometimes they only get a game, sometimes they only get 2 games, sometimes they never hit the ice at the NHL level. And, I always talk about that the success really comes from just playing pro hockey. It's such a small chance to be a pro hockey player, that I think it's really good that you have that realism. And I imagine Ethan does too, kind of coming through you. And I think that'll probably play in his favor, because if you don't believe anything is going to be handed to you, that's kind of how you become that workhorse. Would you say?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, you got to work for everything you get. And when you get it, you got to still keep working.
Yeah.
And even Ethan making it to this point, it's a major accomplishment. Not many people can say, they've played, major junior hockey in Canada, one of the best, junior leagues in the world in the CHL. So that's a major accomplishment. Mm-hmm. And then only, upwards from obviously this point. And as you were saying, once you get to that point, it just makes you want to keep working and working to improve your game and just improve your chances, right?
Yeah, exactly. And when you get a chance, take advantage of it, because it could be your last.
Oh, I think that's a perfect way to end this, because well said. All right, Shawn, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on with Vasili and I. And we look forward to following Ethan as he moves forward. I think next year probably will be a big year for him, and probably will come up in a lot more conversations amongst us Flyers fans. And after he makes pro hockey, we'll invite you back on to talk about it.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. It means a lot to me. It's much appreciated. It was great to meet you both.
Of course, great to meet you too, and thanks for coming on and spending the time, taking some time to talk about some hockey and about your son Ethan's progress and how he's been doing a great job in the WHL.
Thanks, I appreciate it, guys.
Awesome, thank you, Shawn.
Take care. Have a great night.
Yeah, you as well.
Bye.
All right, so that was cool.
It was good to have him on, and it's cool to talk about. Ethan and a lot of progress he's been making.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's so human, Yeah. It's not like there's no super. It's like the one thing I talk about a lot with the prospects, where people are so hard on a lot of these kids, and it's like they're just like people. Like
they're just kids trying to do the best they can and make it right.
Like you hear his dad saying, well, he has to have a job because he wants a car. It's like you all went through that too. It's
exactly.
It's just really interesting to hear, that kind of perspective. And I feel like we never really get that stuff. It was
cool to have Shawn on. And it'll be cool. Maybe in the future now we can maybe even get Ethan on for an interview at some point.
Yeah, that'd be cool. All right, let's get into Flyers hockey. Oh God, what a miserable season.
Probably the best reaction to think about. You think of the word Flyers hockey and then you think of what you just did.
This season, and look, I've been doing this for 2 years. This podcast, I think, a little over 2 years already. I don't think anybody has probably seen me this disheartened as a Flyers fan.
I try to stay on the positive side of things as somebody who's been watching the team for a long time. You obviously have to be realistic about stuff, but I try to stay more on the positive side. And I can say that there's not many positives other than Carter Hart. For me, there's not much of a positive this season, I would say. And maybe getting some of the young guys ice time, but even that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right now. It's not the best environment for them either, too.
Yeah,
for losing,
absolutely. Well, we got a good amount to talk about, though.
Yeah.
Let's get into the first topic, and let's just talk about the Philadelphia Flyers' recent game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Flyers dropped back-to-back losses to the Detroit Red Wings, and then started off maybe their best game in a while against the Pittsburgh Penguins. They go down in the game. They come back. They go down 2-1 in the first period. They come back, score 3 goals in the second, take a 4-2 lead into the third period. And then and quite frankly, did not play that poorly. But at the end of the day, you notice that this team is playing it's half NHL players on this roster.
Yeah, there's a lot of AHLers, that's for sure.
Yeah, the injuries are getting ridiculous. Rasmus Ristolainen is now on IR. The defense outside of Provorov and Sanheim, it's pretty much all guys that will not be here next year. And it's just kind of brutal to watch, but Flyers kind of blow that lead late. They give up 2 goals quickly back to back. And then once the Penguins tied it, you could kind of feel that, this was probably in the Penguins' hands to take. Claude Giroux makes, somewhat of a nice play actually in his zone going into the offensive zone, makes kind of a risky pass, a backhand pass that gets stripped by Letang, who he kind of stopped in the Flyers zone. Letang takes it the other way, beats Carter Hart, and the Pengs take it again, 5-4. Claude Giroux did have a really nice goal in this game.
Yeah. Raise the trade value, but
yeah. Honestly, I don't think he could anymore.
No, it's not.
But no, I know what you mean. Sidney Crosby scores his 500th goal against the Flyers, which, let's be honest, was bound to happen.
I knew that was as soon as he was at $4.99 coming.
If you didn't bet on that and you're a betting man, you're silly because you.
I didn't bet on it, but I actually probably should have because I was as soon as I knew that was happening, I'm like, oh, he's getting it for sure.
Dude, I saw people on Twitter saying that, there's this thing that I talk about all the time. There's a narrative in sports that sometimes it's just unstoppable.
That was unstoppable.
Yeah, there are some things that happen in sports where you're you don't know for sure, but you can see it and you're the writing is on the wall. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. So if you understand that and you understand Crosby's success against the Flyers
yeah.
And you see that milestone around the corner, you go, there's an 80% chance this is happening, And
the thing is, he probably was like, I love to score my 500th against the Flyers too.
Yeah,
so
biggest
probably
rival.
Probably adds to it for him too. And I think the craziest thing for me is it harps back to everything that has been happening with this team over the last few months. Is as soon as one thing goes wrong, if they're up 4-2, as soon as they let one goal in that maybe isn't the best goal, the coverage is kind of off in front of the net, it all just falls apart quickly for them. And that's a big theme this season, is that once something goes bad, these players just can't find a way to rebound and stop the bleeding.
The funny part is that and I brought this up several times already, is if the team was playing like this when they were healthy under Vigneault, they wouldn't have lost 10 games in a row. No. They're not playing as bad as they were under Vigneault.
No, they're not.
They just have a lot less talent available to play.
Yeah. To be fair, if you put in a lot of the injured players that they're missing right now and they're playing this way, they probably win last night if they have Couturier and Hayes and Allison. Let's be real.
100%. Well, I texted you before we started. Let's just get into this because this is obviously a fun conversation. So if you look at the Flyers lineup right now, okay, let's take Giroux out of the top line. You have Lindblom, Blank, Atkinson. The second line is JVR, Lawton, TK, right? Okay.
Yeah.
The third line is Willman, Frost, Mayhew. The fourth line is Ratcliffe, maybe Brown, who's not healthy yet, right? But right now, Bunneman and Zach McEwen. The fourth line is, the first pairing is Provorov, Braun, who's probably gone. Sanheim, Risto, who's injured and maybe gone also. So let's say Sanheim, Sealer. Then you have Yandel, who's, if not gone this year, definitely gone next year. But I do think there's a chance he gets moved also. It's Yandel and Connaughton. And then you have Hart and then Jones, who's probably gone as well. If we eliminate Giroux, Braun, Yandel, Jones, let's even say Risto and Brassard, and you keep the injuries where they are, which outside of Farabee probably will be the case, there's nothing on this team. You look at this team.
This is one of the worst teams in the league on paper after the fact of those players being traded.
Yeah, with the injuries, they on paper are worse than Montreal.
Yeah, they're really, really bad.
There's not enough talent with the injuries to compete with any team on any level if you remove those additional guys that are up for movement at the trade deadline. You look at that, and quite frankly, the Flyers might actually bottom out by the end of this year and end up being a top 3 worst team in this league. I don't know.
I think it's in the cards. If they trade away Giroux, I think it's a given at this point. I would say Braun's a given. The only question mark, and you'd probably agree with me on this, is Ristolainen most likely. So then at that point, even if you did keep Ristolainen, I mean, I don't know if he's moving the needle that much for you to win a lot more games on a consistent basis. So either way, with him or not, like it's going to be one of the worst rosters in the league. And you could argue that the Flyers, it's kind of what they need, right? I mean, it's a lost season. You're going to see all these injuries of players, of guys who aren't really going to be coming back, and there's no reason to try to rush them to come back. So you might as well take advantage and know that, okay, we're going to finish in the bottom three. We're going to have a chance to win the lottery and then get a really good prospect that is going to help us for, the next 10 to 15 years. So,
yeah. And if they drop in that bottom three, I mean, there's a potential superstar waiting there for you. Again, we've talked about this over and over again. The top 10 of this draft is definitely very good. I saw some people online saying this isn't a good draft. You don't know what you're talking about. This is actually a very good draft. Next year is even better.
Yeah. These two are probably the best two in the last like 10 years, I'd say.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And this is the year to accrue assets. I don't know if the Flyers can move on from Yandel. I think there's a chance just because of his name recognition and the fact that he doesn't get injured. But again, you're really just getting like a 6th or 7th round pick for him. Giroux, we'll actually talk about that at the end. Justin Braun, I think a 2nd round pick is definitely achievable. I don't know if they're going to get above like a 2nd plus. Could be a 3rd round pick in the end. I definitely think.
But in a deep draft, I mean, a 2nd for Braun, that's I think something you could be proud of getting.
Well, that's kind of what I say. That's why I think it's rough this year, right? Because it is a deeper draft. So that
teams
2nd round
pick,
pick,
want to hold on.
Yeah, but the Flyers need a 2nd round pick. They don't have one this year. They don't have one next year.
Can recoup there.
Yeah, they're gonna have to recoup that. I think Jones can net you like a 3rd. I definitely think Ristolainen can get you a 1st. Apparently, Ben Sherratt, the ask is a 1st round pick, and
Risto's gonna get a 1st.
Yeah, Risto is much better than
gonna get a 1st. Yeah.
I think Ristolainen is, again, the Flyers might choose to re-sign him, but
there's value to be had if they do choose to trade him and move on.
And Brassard's got the injury issues at this point, so I'm
know. Skeptical if they're going to be able to move him, just because it seems as though every time he comes back, he gets hurt again. And then if you're a team, are you willing to even give up anything for that?
For a guy who could get injured.
Yeah. For a guy who could get injured, when you could probably just trade it for like another kind of bottom tier player that you can find somewhere else and just waste the asset on that. So we'll see. I mean, if Fletcher can move him, that's kudos, because obviously it would be difficult with somebody having that many injuries.
Yeah, I do think Jones is definitely a movable candidate as well. I just don't know how much we'll actually get for him.
Probably 3rd or 4th, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's doable. Which again, I would definitely move Jones. I have no problem with bringing Sandstrom up at this point to play a backup role. In fact, I would actually welcome it with where the team is right now. I'd rather see what Sandstrom has. And then obviously, actually, let's just talk about it now. I have it listed a little bit later, but we have a guy like Ivan Fedotov out there who, obviously he's doing really well at the Olympics, was doing really well in the KHL. Like, that's a guy that would be interested to see if he wants to come over to the NHL next year.
Yeah, he looks really good in the Olympics right now. Like, I've seen a few games, and he's just overall solid.
And he's a monster.
He's a monster. Yeah, he's 6'8", and then the thing that I saw, in his game that is the most intriguing to me is, for a big goalie, he moves really quickly, but also the rebound control. Like, usually if you're bigger, it's easier to give up rebounds just because there's so much of you, the puck can bounce off. So it's hard to kind of like control, let's say, where it's going. So for big guys, rebound control is incredible.
Yeah, man. It's interesting because it's kind of like a weird position the Flyers are in, right? Because you don't see them going into next season with like a guy like Fedotov and Hart, or Sandstrom and Hart. But then you still have Ersan here, you have Ustamenko here. It is kind of like a weird numbers game where, like, I know that, Fletcher even talked about they want to bring Fedotov over, but
they have a lot of good prospects, so it's going to be hard.
Yeah, what are we doing with the goalie situation? I feel like if Fedotov's coming over here, he's not coming over here for less than being the starter in the AHL.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way I see it is, you're hoping that one of those guys, I mean, either Sandstrom, I'd say, or Fedotov or Ersan grabs the backup role. Maybe you have them, have their internal competition in camp. And then from that point, whoever loses out, I mean, battles for the starter job in the AHL. The only risk is you don't want Fedotov, being the odd man out, and then just goes back to Russia after it all anyway. So that's the hard thing. So I think maybe it might be something like, if you're going to get Fedotov to come over, you might have to guarantee him, like, okay, you're going to be the backup. You're going to be
NHL.
Yeah, in the NHL, which would make sense, because if you look at Sorokin or Shesterkin, when they first came over, they didn't come and play in the AHL at all, right? They came straight to the NHL.
No, I think you're right.
It makes a lot of sense, because if you're in the KHL, which is arguably probably, second best league in the world, and you're already, at home and in your familiar situations, you're with your family, it wouldn't make sense for you to leave that scenario to come here to be an AHL goaltender. That just is the way I look at it.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it, and who was telling me Felix Sandstrom is 20? I think I was on a podcast. People were correcting me and telling me Felix Sandstrom is 23 years old. He's not.
He's
25.
He's a lot older. He's been around for a while.
So him and Fedotov were drafted the same year. Both. I remember somebody was correcting me, and I was like, "Oh, I guess I'm wrong," but I knew that he wasn't 23 years old. So you have two guys.
That makes sense, though. Like 25 is the age usually goalies typically break into the league. So
exactly that's what I was saying. And again, if Sandstrom is the AHL guy, that's fine. But I think if you think Fedotov is good enough, you're going to bring him over. I mean, is it really worse to have a guy like Fedotov than Jones as a backup goalie?
No, I would say that arguably with the potential, he could be a lot better than. He has the potential, at least for me, the way I see it, Fedotov has the potential to be a starter, I think, in the league, given the right circumstances, behind the right defense.
Exactly.
Just look at the athleticism. That's the first thing. A 6'8" goalie. That's really intriguing. And also look at the numbers he's posting in the KHL. It's starting goalie numbers for sure. And he is a starter in the KHL. He has been for a few seasons. So,
yeah, no, I think that's well said. You kind of took the words right out of my mouth, because it seems like it's not make or break. Like, you can wait a little bit. You own his rights. It's not like the end of the world, but
yeah,
you think about where he is in his development, his age. Again, we're going past this season. He's probably going to be 26 when he comes over here. Like you said, he's 6'8". He's in his mid-20s. It's probably time. So I would not be surprised if the Flyers bring him over. If it doesn't work out, he goes back. The Flyers sign like another veteran guy. Maybe they have like a camp invite for a goalie.
Yeah. Or maybe bring up a Sandstrom.
Yeah, that's what I say. You still have Felix Sandstrom.
So.
We don't know where this team is going to be next year. We don't know where they're going to be cap wise. So maybe it's actually the right move is to bring over like a cheaper Fedotov on a 1-year deal, and just be like, okay, well, if it doesn't work out with him, he goes back to Russia, and then, we're back to competing the following year anyway, but we have to figure out our cap situation, because I don't think they're buying out JVR. So, they got to wait. That's like $7 million off the cap coming off the following year. So I don't know. It's going to get interesting.
Yeah. And the thing is too, you have to just see what you have with these goalie prospects and give them the opportunity. It's getting to that point, like you said, with Sandstrom and Fedotov, where they're about 25 going into being 26 years old. And that's where, you usually find out, okay, this is what we have with these prospects, and we have to let them play and figure it out. Give them some NHL reps. So I firmly believe if it isn't Fedotov backing up hard, it'll probably be Sandstrom. I think the organization's inclined to go with somebody in-house. At least once you have all those prospects, you might as well. And it's not supposed to be a very competitive year, despite what they say next season. They may turn around and the team might be super competitive, but with the way things are going this year, it could be hard to see that. So I would see them leaning towards giving it to a younger guy for sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's definitely on the table. And we say younger guy, but he's older than Carter Hart. So yeah, exactly. I don't know. It might be time. It might be time to make that risk, because you got to see what you have in him on the NHL ice. Now, we do have to remember it doesn't translate immediately. The KHL is a different league. It's a larger rink. They tend to have more less scoring opportunities in the KHL than do in the NHL. Less in tight shots. But again, the kid is 6'8". Yeah. You got to see what you have in him, because it might be a complete steal. And if you have another, high-end prospect goaltender and you combine that, then all of a sudden you do have a Gorgiev Shesterkin combination like the Rangers have. Yeah. And that's really lethal and cost controlled. Which would be really interesting. If you need to address another part of the roster, you can always end up moving on from somebody to do that when you have, another really good goalie prospect. So that could make a guy like Sandstrom, like affordable to trade versus if you didn't bring over Fedotov, you never kind of know, right?
Yeah.
So
because you still have other goalie prospects in the mix.
that
obviously
looked promising. So
yes. What's the other guy that we drafted at 19? Let me look up his name actually. For some reason it's escaped. It's Kolosov, I think is his name.
yeah, yes, you're definitely right there.
Alexei Kolosov. He was drafted at 19. He has some pretty good numbers right
He's
now.
Supposed to be doing pretty well right now, as well. So
he's young and he's playing for Minsk Dynamo. Pretty good numbers. But again, still really young. But like again, the Flyers aren't lacking goaltending prospects, so might as well see what you have in them. So I want to bring something up, a stat that you sent to me. I don't have the full breakdown of it, but I think it is very interesting while we're talking about a lot of bad stuff of late. Oscar Lindblom, 14 points in the last 22 games. You know the breakdown of that? By any chance, Vasili?
So he has 5 goals,
9 assists.
9 assists, yeah.
And that's in
22 games. Yeah, and he's a +9 in that span as well.
Wow.
So he's like all around. I mean, that's what you're expecting from Oscar Lindblom. Everybody says
back.
Yeah, really. Everybody's expecting, or everybody's, always would say that he's the player that they most want to play with on the ice because he always is in the right position doing the little things right. And you see that paying off now. You see those little things paying off into
100%.
Him getting onto the score sheet.
100%. I love that you pulled that stat out. And one, obviously, it's been under Mike Yeo, and like I said, the team has been playing differently under Mike Yeo than they were under Lane Vigneault. I do want to point this out as he was struggling, and there is a difference in play. I am not discounting that at all. That is totally true. But the one thing that I was saying over and over again, and you agreed with me when you joined this podcast, how is Oscar Lindblom supposed to be putting up any points playing on the fourth line with guys who can't score themselves? He's been playing with Claude Giroux, and he has 14 points in 22 games. This is not a guy that should have been playing on the bottom end of the lineup to begin with, and that was also a mistake. To do that to him.
And the thing with a young player, especially coming out of what he had to go through with the cancer battle, and obviously getting back to a full 100% and being confident in your skills as a player, because that takes a big toll on you physically, 100%. Right? Is you're getting put into now a situation where, okay, I'm not doing the best, let's say, I'm not playing the best, and now I'm on the fourth line. That's got to be a confidence drainer, right? So that's something that probably didn't help him getting put into that situation. So just the fact that, he was able to jump back up the lineup, get to put these points up, it only bodes well for the future of, his play, and then just his confidence going forward, and the fact that he can build on this going into next season too. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I honestly, I love seeing it because he's not a guy I wanted to trade at all. But now you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to, because he's got a very affordable cap hit
for $3 million. I mean, I think I also had another stat. He was on pace. So in the 22 games of, the 5 goals, 9 assists, technically he's on pace over an 82 game season, 19 goals, 52 points. So, I mean, if that's the Lindblom you're getting, that's what you can't be, even more happy at that price and value. So
100%. And he's a two-way player. And, I did mention trading Scott Lawton again, not because first of all, Scott Lawton has been one of the best players on this team this year. And where this team would be without him is like, it would be shocking.
It'd be even worse. And he's playing above his head in the role he's playing. So kudos to him.
Dude, there's a good chance that after Claude Giroux gets traded, that he's going to be the number 1 center on this team.
Oh, he is. I mean, because I can't see them putting Frost in that situation after they just sent him down and then called him back up. There's obviously a disconnect there. So
yeah. And we did have Fletcher say Tanner Lazinski is close. But he's not coming in the NHL after missing so much time.
1C either. So
yeah, I mean, he would be great to get up here. I mean, Connor Bunneman has been admirable, but he's obviously not ready to play the role that he's in, and that line is getting shellacked, and like they just don't have center depth. I mean, Patrick Brown will be back. He'll probably play a third line role when Giroux's gone. And I do want to get into the Giroux trade rumors in a second, but you look at this lineup. I assume they'll get a couple of young guys back if they do make, some trades here at the trade deadline. But this is a team that's really going to kind of leak its way towards the, end of the season.
Well, we were saying they have a good chance once they trade all these guys. Like bottoming out is a real possibility. So
yeah. And again, when the team is not actually as bad as the record, because like you look at the names missing and it's like ridiculous. Like this team is half of the team we thought that they were going to be this year.
yeah.
You got to take advantage of it. And if you can walk away, I'll keep saying Cooley, even though it seems to me like he's going to end up going number 2 in the draft this year.
We could be there though with the way it's going.
Yeah.
So.
And there's also a lottery in there. If you can walk away with a guy like Cooley, you make a big Claude Giroux trade, all of a sudden the tone of the team is changing. You inject some young talent in here. You got money in free agency. You can fix a lot of this and at least be competitive next season. And not be what we are this year. I don't know if we're going to get back into a playoff. I think losing Giroux is going to set the franchise back, at least competitively. Just losing a guy of that caliber.
And he just wants to win so much, like on an every night basis. Even you see him like the way he's competing in a season that's, lost by all means if you look at it, but he still is going 100% and the motor is high. So it's crazy, right?
Yeah, I still don't think it's impossible. I think it's unlikely, but I don't think it's impossible that he could re-sign here in the offseason too. Like
I could definitely see it. It has to play out, right? Obviously the right circumstances, but it's something that's open on the table.
Let me ask you this, okay? You have an option to sign Johnny Goudreau for, let's say, 7 years at $8.5 million. Or you have an option to sign Claude Giroux for 3 years at $6.5 million. What would you do?
Oh, you just put me on the spot. That's a hard one. Yeah. Personally, me, I love Giroux, man, but I'm gonna go with Goudreau just because of the age. That's just like what I would do.
You got to sign him for 7 years.
Yeah, for 7 years, I know. But it's still, because of the age, I'll just go with Johnny because I'm like, the first couple of years are going to be really high end. And then after that, if he tails off, he tails off. And Giroux's still going to be, a good player. But like, if you see how Goudreau's ripping up this year, Giroux's great. He's not on the same level he was like when, he was at the same age as Johnny. So that's probably why
I would say he's a level above.
Yeah,
when at his prime, he was in his prime, Johnny
for sure. But he definitely matches what he's doing this year. Like even a couple years ago, 102 points. Like Giroux's a hell of a player.
And the reason I say this is is Johnny Goudreau. I think he's 28.
Yeah, exactly.
He's 28 years old, right? So it's not horrible, right? You think he's finishing at 35, which sounds about right for a guy with his skill set.
That's about what Giroux is gonna. But now he just turned 34.
But you look at the back half of that contract, and he is not a center. He is smaller than Claude Giroux and a guy who I wouldn't say has ever struggled sincerely, but he's had lower end seasons than Claude Giroux's bottom. And I look at that and I go, and this is not me saying I don't want Johnny Goudreau. Like I'm not sitting here crying if they sign him, but far from that. But I do look at that and I go, okay, if we don't really know where we're going as a team, like, do we really want to sign Goudreau to a 7-year deal? And then God forbid we have to find a way out of it.
Yeah. At a time where, money.
Well, at a time where we have a bunch of young guys up and coming because we trade for a high end prospect, we get one in the draft, and all of a sudden, we have Johnny Goudreau, who is now a 3rd-line player on this team, a la JVR, you know what I mean? Who's not worth the money. Again, Goudreau is better than JVR. I'm just throwing out that scenario, even like a Nazem Kadri, right?
Hard. It's a hard 31. Situation. It's a hard situation. I think,
Kadri's going to get a 7-year deal.
Yeah, Kadri I'd stay away from at his age. That's my opinion there. Great player, but for the term and money he's going to get coming off the season, which he should get paid because he's playing amazing.
He's going to get something. He's going to get.
I just wouldn't commit that. It's a tough situation. That's why I was so stumped when you asked me the question because if you put Fletcher in that situation, I could go like I'm on the fence with it. I could go either way based on like what might happen in the future. Obviously, that's the hard part. You never know what's going to happen. Yeah. So that's the hardest part, trying to predict. That's why I just go with Goudreau just based off the fact that he's a little bit younger. So you might be able to reap a little more of the benefits of him. At that age, if you signed him being younger, but you wanting to re-sign Giroux for like a shorter term and less money makes a ton of sense too, because then you are not locked in as long and you also have more money to spend to add to Giroux, who's almost just as good as Goudreau right now anyway. So
yeah,
it's really hard. I'm sure it's a hard scenario.
That's why I was thinking that. I go, and who's available in 2 years when this team is actually all of a sudden
closer to competing?
Exactly. I was like, then all of a sudden, like that buys me a guy who's comparable without the humongous salary and is a leader for this team, loves this city. Again, I don't think that's going to happen. Let me ask you this question, and then I do want to get into Giroux trade rumors. But let me ask you this: you have an option between 2 guys.
Okay.
Johnny Goudreau or Phillip Forsberg.
Forsberg? What's Forsberg's age?
He's 20. I think he's the same. He's either a year younger, or I think he might be a year younger.
I'm going Forsberg.
Me
just
too.
Because he's more of a goal scorer than Goudreau, and that's what the team needs still.
Yeah.
Even though you add Atkinson,
they need a playmaker as well right now.
That too. But still, like Forsberg has that shot. I mean, let's see, how old is he?
I think he's 27.
He's 27. He's 27.
Yeah.
So he's a little younger.
Yeah. I don't think he's making it to free agency. I do.
No, I think he's going to get re-signed because that's like Nashville's franchise player.
Absolutely. And I do think people have to be very cautious of a lot of these like off-season game plan. Majority of guys, top-end guys that you see that are UFAs right now will not make it to UFA.
Yeah, exactly. Like even Thomas Hertl is apparently in contract negotiation with the Sharks.
Perfect example.
And they said like he wants term, and the Sharks are going to get back to him on that. So we'll see if they end up signing him or not. But
why wouldn't they give him term?
Yeah,
he's their number one center.
That's a good question. I mean, unless they're literally trying to bottom out for Bedard, like who knows? Like it's hard.
NHL teams don't really do that.
I know, but
so rare.
It is rare. It's just the thing is. And then even back to these questions, and even with the Giroux Goudreau question, is like Fletcher has we look forward to next season, but it's really a long-term planning type of thing because you can look forward and say, okay, we're not going to spend our money this season in free agency, and then we're going to save it for a couple of years out when this guy's a free agent. We're going to target him. Like who knows what they're really thinking behind closed doors? So it's hard to kind of say, even with them going all out saying, oh, we want to be as competitive as we can as soon as possible. Who really knows? Until we see moves being made and the action and the processes are in motion, it's hard to gauge what they're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and we've gone over this before. Like right now, if Evgeny Malkin is UFA, he'll get re-signed. In my opinion, he's not.
Oh yeah, probably.
He's not. He's going to retire a Penguin. I don't know why they would get rid of him. He's a point per game player still, and they're competitive. Just like if we were competitive, I don't think Claude Giroux would be getting.
If we were competitive, he wouldn't. Like if we were in a playoff spot, or even
he's not going.
If we were in 10th place or above, he wouldn't be getting traded.
No, I don't think so at all. This is just because things are going so poorly. PK Subban's a UFA. Again, value completely diminished. He's not a top end option this year. Freaking Phil Kessel, still a pretty good player. He's going to be UFA. He will probably be available. Patrick Laine is a RFA, but they're going to look to either re-sign him or trade him if they can't. So somebody's going to be re-signing him before an RFA deal is even available, in my opinion. Chris Letang is a UFA. I don't think he's going to make it to UFA either.
No.
Possible, but probably not. And again, 35 years old. It's just like
I don't know if anybody wants to sign him. Like it's going to be almost like one of those contracts where in a couple of years you're going to be regretting it. So.
Exactly. Matthew Tkachuk, though Chris Letang is pretty badass. Matthew Tkachuk, he's an RFA. He will not. He's probably getting re-signed. I don't know why that would even be a problem.
Yeah.
Joe Pavelski is 37. Obviously, still a monster. He's got 52 points in 47 games.
There's been talk if he's going to get traded from Dallas or not. So I think they'll probably try to move him.
Yeah. No, I could see it. For sure. And that would be a monster pickup for any team. Again, he's playing ridiculously well. He's a high end player, but. He's going to be a UFA. Is that somebody the Flyers are going to look to sign?
Oh, no way. No. For Flyers, no. But if you're going
maybe on a 1-year deal,
if you're a team on a playoff run right now.
Yeah, I'm talking about more like off-season pickup now. Yeah. So like Patrice Bergeron, he's a UFA.
He's not leaving Boston.
He's not leaving Boston unless he's retiring, which is possible, but I doubt it. He's 36 years old, so I think he's still got another year left in the tank. So Johnny Goudreau is somebody who might be likely, Giordano, he's going to be 39 when he's a UFA. Kotakaniemi's an RFA. Maybe he'll get traded.
I feel like Carolina will try to re-sign him, but
I think they might. I think they're going to trade him.
Maybe, yeah.
Louis Eriksson is a UFA. Phillip Forsberg is going to be a UFA again. Probably won't make it. Once we start going down the top lists here of UFAs, and you look at the fact that most of these guys are not going to make it,
it's thin pretty quick.
Yeah, Thomas Hertel.
There's going to be a few big names, then aside from that, it's not the best crop, I would say.
Palat might make it to UFA. He'll be one of the top available guys, but he's not a star player.
No, and you'd say his situation has maybe made him a little bit better, or his stats seem a little bit better than they actually should be. Because you're playing with all that talent in Tampa. So
yeah, dude. Pierre-Luc Dubois is an RFA. He'll get re-signed. He's having a really good year.
The Flyers got to be wary. Of these UFAs. A lot of them are on the older side of. I'd say 27, 28. So if you are going to make a big signing, you got to be careful about who it is.
Yeah, it's like Kadri.
That's somebody I would say stay away. On Fletcher.
And
I've heard a rumor on the Elliot Friedman, 32 Thoughts podcast. They were talking about how they're hearing Kadri's a real Philly guy, and I heard that, and I'm just like, oh no.
Yeah, but it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense, but
it doesn't actually make sense. He's 31 years old. He's gonna get for a career year. He's getting 7 years, probably at least 6 years. And that'll bring him to the age of 37, 38 years old. And he's going to get what, like 7 at
million,
least?
For sure.
At least.
Yeah.
Like literally, what are we going to do with him?
Nothing but have him, eventually be good for a couple seasons. And then you'll see like the decline kind of.
I can't see him coming to Philly. I could see another bad team with cap space signing him for max.
Yeah.
Like Buffalo.
I think Colorado wants to try to keep him if they can, but it's going to be hard, obviously.
It'll be at a discount. He's not going to get max.
They're going to have to make something work, but it's up to him, right? If they're a winning team and he wants to win, maybe he'll take a discount. It's really going to be an interesting one with that.
Well, that's kind of why my thing is like, dude, re-sign Giroux in the offseason. It's literally the simplest thing to do.
And he wants to be here. You saw I don't know if you saw the press conference today.
He doesn't seem like a guy who wants to leave town.
No, he seems like discouraged that it's the fact that he's even talking about it. He seems like, I don't really want to be talking about this.
Well, and that's where I don't agree with the common consensus that he's not. And I understand why people say that. And for every other player, I'd be like, yeah, he's probably not coming back. I would say definitely
special
not.
Circumstances.
Yes. I think this is a situation where, again, if I was GM, I have no idea what Chuck Fletcher's thinking. But if I was GM, I'd be looking at this and I'd be like, look, G, I don't want you to go anywhere, but I need these right now, if you want to come back here, I will re-sign you, but we will have the assets to turn this around faster and give him a handshake deal. I don't know if our GM is actually thinking that. A lot of times they, in their mind, are like, well, we're moving on from him.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not saying that is the most realistic.
Might as well leave the door open, I think, and see,
because
come
your
back
options are really, your options are not really better.
No.
In the UFA market. Nazem
Kadri, if all goes right, it could be good, but there's a lot of risk involved with all the signings.
Right. Brian Rust is not a guy you want to invest in.
No.
That's a guy who's benefiting from being in Pittsburgh
and playing with Crosby.
Yeah. Goudreau is for real. Unless you really think you're going to get Johnny Goudreau, again, you're going to have to give him a really big contract, probably more than you're going to have to give Giroux. It's just I don't really understand the point of not doing that deal. I'd be happy with Joe Pavelski for a couple of years instead of Giroux. I love Joel Pavelski, but in my mind, I just don't see this team as being a cup contender next year. So why am I investing in
why you're going to spend like that? Exactly.
When none of these guys are a top center too.
And that's what the team needs. That's the real thing that we're lacking.
They need a play driving top center. And if Phil Forsberg was available, he's also a guy worth investing. Totally agree. Phil Forsberg and Johnny Goudreau, I think we both agree those would be the prime guys.
Those are probably those are the two guys to go after. Hertel would be okay, but I just think that he's more of a high-end second line center, really, like on a really, really good team versus that number one guy. And then you get into, a situation where you have $8 million tied up in, Couture. Well, not 8 million, but I'm just paraphrasing, but like 8 million and 7 million, like Couturier, Hayes, and Hurdle. That's like a ton of money for, two guys in Hayes and Hurdle that aren't really number one guys. So
yeah. I mean, like Vincent Dorchek is a good player. He's not gonna again. Why do you have Kevin Hayes? Like, I don't know. I wouldn't be upset if we got Goudreau, and I wouldn't be upset if we got Phillip Forsberg at all. Those would be wins. But I look at the names available here, and nothing to me is like, hey, this is gonna change our scenario.
Yeah.
So
let's get what you add with those guys, kind of like the prospects, stuff like that.
Right. Okay. And that's what I want to say. Like, if we get Newhook and then we sign even Phil Kessel, right? I'm just throwing out a name there, right? Which I know a lot of people don't want, but then all of a sudden, you're just adding a Phil Kessel for 2 years, right? And then, and then you bring in the young guys, and they're just going to help nurture that along. Same reason why we have Atkinson here and JVR. And but a lot of these guys are going. Like, Atkinson is kind of he's a rarity here, and he's still a very good player. I just don't see a scenario here where the Flyers really make out through the UFA market and make themselves a substantially better team in what they really need, which is the high end talent. Not so much like fill in guys, which there are plenty of those, plenty of decent players and decent to good players available. But like John Klingberg, we're not going for Klingberg. I think that's almost extremely unlikely.
I don't see it happening either.
I don't see it happening. Really, the only thing I see us going for is maybe the top guys if Giroux's not signed. I'd really look, I'm going to go gain assets, and I'm going to re-sign Giroux. I'm going to hope this team does better the following year. And if not, my window is really the year beyond that. To really be highly competitive.
And then, stocking up in next year's draft is supposed to be so lucrative in terms of assets. So
exactly.
Either way, I mean, if the team does want to compete next year and they can do a quick turnaround, obviously that's a good thing, because you want to watch a competitive team. You want to see the team get better, and you don't want to see a season like this. But if next season isn't the greatest, from making sure that the team is a lot better, the next decade ahead versus just 1 year, it's probably the best thing, right? Because the draft next year is so good that you can really hit on some great players and rebuild your whole prospect pool and maybe your even organization just out of one draft. So if you are, consistent with your picks and hit where you need to. So,
well, it does make you think this too, is there a trade out there that the Flyers might look to, swap an asset for? The one thing I thought about, and I don't think it's likely, but what if the Flyers trade Ryan Ellis?
I mean, I could see it happening depending on, how they're going to
in the offseason.
Yeah. It's an offseason move. That's an offseason move.
Wouldn't that be hilarious?
It would kind of, but
4 games, and then
I would say if they trade him, then it's really clear to me that they're going to try to bottom out next year too.
Yes,
that's my perspective.
I don't think it's happening.
No, I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to try to get him. Back and healthy to play. Obviously, because you gave up 2 young assets for him, so why wouldn't you want to do that?
Again, I said I wouldn't have made that trade.
Yeah, and it's hard to know. How the defense would shake out with him, and the other guys you have on the defense already. So it makes sense to want to see that. So I don't think they're going to try to actively, trade him. But if the right deal came along, I guess you'd have to listen to it. But it would be interesting to see them do that, and it kind of shows if they did do something like that, that the way that they're leaning towards for next season. That's for sure.
But would you be upset if the Flyers were maybe they didn't overtly say this, but let's say they just trade Ryan Ellis, they trade Ristolainen, they trade Giroux, they trade Braun, they trade Jones, they let the other guys walk, and they bring in a bunch of young guys, and you're like, well, this team is not really better than last year. But wouldn't you kind of be like, okay, but there's a plan here?
Yeah, exactly. The plan is to let the young guys play, let them mature, and then get,
free up cap space.
Yeah, free up cap space, cash in on our draft capital for next year's draft. And then after that, I think with
then
that
you have a real
space,
opportunity.
Yeah, with the cap space, you have the opportunity to go out the next following offseason and sign some more players to add to all the prospects and younger players you've just been developing over the last season. So
yeah,
there's that I mean is a good plan. I don't know if that's something they're going to do. I don't really know what their plan is at all. So we're just spitballing.
I don't know. Yeah, no, I have no idea. I don't think Ryan Ellis is getting traded.
Me neither, but that's a good scenario. That I just think this is going to be an interesting offseason just for the fact that I don't care who you are right now. Like nobody who covers this team, assesses this team, has any idea what they're going to do. And that's the most fascinating thing going forward for me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Remember I told you that I got hit up with, I know the Flyers game plan or whatever.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure one of those game plans were Thomas Hertl.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah. Nobody knows anything.
No.
And at this point it's way too, it really depends. The beginning of this is really the Claude Giroux trade. Let's get into the options and we can end on that.
Yeah.
So let's just start off with Tyler Toffoli was recently traded to the Calgary Flames. I had the trade in front of me. Let me scroll real quick.
I actually have it here.
No, I got it right here. Emil Heinemann, a first-round pick in 2022. It is a conditional. I'm not sure what the condition is. Oh, top 10 protected. Makes sense. And then a fifth-round pick in 2023. And Tyler Pitlick go to Montreal in exchange for Tyler Toffoli. Yeah, who's making $4.25 million a year, which is a very nice price for a guy who is at least a 20-goal scorer in the NHL.
Consistently, too. So.
But obviously, kind of a big price to pay. Emil Heinemann. I don't know too much about him. Let me just see.
He looks like he's going to be pretty decent.
Yeah, he was drafted in the second round pick.
Yeah, he's going to have a chance. He's going to have a chance to make the league for sure. I mean, who knows what it's going to turn into, but it's a good trade. I mean, from Montreal, considering they're bottoming out, they're going to probably be pretty bad for a little bit. So there's no point of hanging on to a Toffoli. But the main reason I think we're bringing it up, though, is if you see Tyler Toffoli getting traded for those many pieces and assets, what's, a Claude Giroux, who's, one of the greats of the last decade in the NHL and still a great player to this day, almost a point a game right now. What is he going to get traded for? And that's the thing that's crazy, that I see a lot of lowballing or like offers that, Giroux's not going to get as much as you think. But
I don't think that's true at all.
Seeing this Toffoli trade only confirms to me that he's going to get a lot back.
I don't think people are really quite aware. Like I know that people are tempering their expectations. It's smart. Temper your expectations so you're not like, don't go out there and be like, oh, we're going to get a killing. It's not going to be as high as the highest shit.
No.
But it's definitely not going to be low.
It's going to be a good package.
And yes, people can say, oh, Tyler Toffoli is still signed and that's why they got him. And they're essentially getting a great cap hit. That's true. Tyler Toffoli is not Claude Giroux. He's never been Claude Giroux. He's never hit that level. He doesn't play all situations. He's not a center, a wing. He doesn't play PK. He doesn't play the power play on the same way. This is a completely different caliber player. You have to think of it.
He's never a captain either. That plays.
You think of it, and I heard Jason Martinez say this. It's closer to when a team traded for Ray Bourque.
Yeah, exactly.
You are trading for an all-time great for the playoffs. It is going to be expensive. Now, what the Flyers are going to get in return, I'm not quite sure. If they're getting a top end prospect, I would not expect a first round pick coming additionally.
Which would make sense. But I mean, that's a replaceable thing because the whole thing with the top prospect is at least you don't have to develop and draft. He's basically almost there.
Exactly. So but if you're getting that, you're probably getting like maybe a second round pick.
Yeah.
Or
which I think I would be fine with. Like if you gave me a Newhook or a Bowen Byram and then you get a second round pick attached.
Dude, I would be cool to take Newhook for Giroux straight up and that's it.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that as well.
Like I think the Flyers can probably get like if they're like, oh, well, we want to give you Jost and a second. I'm going to be like, okay, I'll take Newhook.
Yeah.
Like, exactly. I literally, in my mind, all we need is to get one high-end prospect for Giroux. That's what's important here.
I think that should be the main focus anyway. And hopefully a center or I'd say a defense prospect. Those are the two main things I'd say.
I think it could be either or at this point. We don't really know.
I don't want them to really be looking at wingers like the system. There's such a wealth of there. I mean, obviously, if it's a great winger, sure, but
yes,
you want to aim for center.
If it's a Cole Caulfield level guy,
then
sure, you got me. But like I said, though, it just has to be a top tier prospect. That is definitely achievable for Claude Giroux. Realistically, like I heard the name Boldy going out there. Do I think Boldy's caliber is too high in a Claude Giroux trade? No, but I think the fact that he's playing top 6 for his team, they're not going to want to do that.
Yeah,
Any team that's in a playoff position and has a guy playing it's like us trading Joel Farabee. We're not going to do that. We're not doing that. They're not going to do that. But if we have like a Bobby Brink, right? Or a Cam York.
They're not going to want to trade directly off the roster because they're gearing up for a playoff run. It doesn't make any sense.
Here's the example that I'll give people, right? Chris Letang is available, right? From Pittsburgh. They're the bottom of the league, right? And we want to go for a playoff run. What are they going to ask for? They're going to ask for Cam York, right? We might not give them Cam York, but then it's going to be our first round pick, Igor Zamula, and another prospect, right? I'm to try to compensate. I'm not as interested in that deal. I'm more interested in
the high
one,
end.
The one high end guy. And I'm okay. And you can keep the rest of your assets. You can keep your first round pick and all that. Maybe that's not what Fletcher wants to do, but that's where my mindset is. Like we were joking around about the Flyers lineup without Giroux. Like literally there are no centermen left. But then if you get like Newhook in that, then Alex Newhook is your number 1 center for the rest of the year. He's the one playing with Atkinson and Lindblom. And,
I mean, that's valuable experience getting those minutes, all situations. So.
Exactly. And that's the type of thing that I'm looking at right now.
And I think one thing to mention too is, I mean, I saw, thrown out around there that right now it's believed that it's Colorado, Minnesota, St. Louis. I mean, are the, destinations apparently that there's the most traction for Giroux to go to. Obviously, it's hard for us to know because based on Giroux's statement.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, based on Giroux's statement, he said he hasn't even talked to Chuck Fletcher yet, which I mean...
Well, but he's talked to his agent.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe he hasn't talked to the GM. I mean, he's definitely talked to his agent, as you said. He's probably talked to Fletcher too. It's just, I mean, what are you going to say at one of those press conferences? And I think you were going to say too that Florida was mentioned as well. And I think all those teams, they have a wealth of young prospects. So if you can get, Newhook, Justin Barron, Bowen Byram, Marco Rossi, Matt Boldy, those type of guys. I mean, that's what you got to aim for.
Marco Rossi, that's the one where I'm like, you're not going to give me Boldy, but I want Rossi.
Yeah, I think he's
not really in your lineup.
That's the point you're getting to. I think that's a good bet if he goes to Minnesota.
And they can say no. I mean, look, there's no guarantee we're getting any of these guys, but that's what I'm approaching. I'm like, you get the franchise Hall of Famer for your cup run who is going to bring it and going to lead your team. And quite frankly, like, I'm sure Toronto would love to get a guy like that, right? I don't like Jamie was bringing it up to me as maybe that's a possibility. I just don't see them having the assets to bring.
Well, they just don't have the high end prospect that I think the Flyers are looking for. Like they have the draft capital. Amirov's decent. He's not like a new hooker. He's not on the level of the other guys we're mentioning.
He's a riskier guy.
Yeah.
And again, they don't necessarily want to trade all of their picks. Like it's just a situation where like if a team like LA, okay, which I think is an option here. They are a playoff team. I don't think they're going to go for it. No. But you know what I mean? They have the assets to throw at us. To get like there are other teams that have the assets.
It's probably not. They're probably not in the right window yet to want to spend those. And that's
exactly.
The thing. You got to look at the teams that are gonna, be the most vulnerable and say, okay, this is our chance, so we better take advantage of like going all in. And that's the thing that I think people need to realize, especially with a player of the caliber of Giroux and just all that he's done throughout his NHL career, is if you're gonna trade for a Giroux who's already still basically a point a game guy. I mean, you're not going to get him for pennies on the dollar just based on what we saw for Toffoli, what we've seen in the past in the last trade deadlines. You're going to have to give something up to get something, right? So people need to be kind of realistic that it might not be as high as, some may want, but it's going to be a good amount of value back.
Yeah. Sure. And if it's a guy like Tyson Jost, okay, that decent, is a pretty good prospect. I'm not going to scoff at him. He probably has more potential to do more in the NHL, but the Flyers are going to be like, oh yeah, Jost makes up for Giroux. They're going to be like, okay, then we want your first round pick for next year,
and
we
maybe
want
a second too. Yeah,
and probably another player, another prospect on top of that. And right now, Colorado doesn't even have a first this year. That means they have to trade their first next year, right? In a deeper draft, right? Where they're like, they might be, if they really want to, they might be forced to just be like, all right, well, we don't have a choice. We either have to give up on Byram and Newhook, and that's it. And we get to keep our picks. We get to at least keep the depth of prospects. Yes,
exactly.
And that's the position you want to corner guys into. Again, I don't know if that's going to happen, but if I'm GM, that's how I'm playing it. I'm not going like, I want everything. I'd be like, okay, I want that guy. And if you don't give me that guy, then I want everything.
Yeah, exactly. Or I'm going somewhere else, and then the bidding war proceeds.
I'm gonna trade him to your competition.
Exactly, which would be a Minnesota or a St. Louis. So
exactly, and quite frankly, they have the assets too. I don't think that Claude Giroux is in a position, or the Claude Giroux puts the Flyers in a position, even with the limited picks, that teams are going to be like, yeah, well, it's just Claude Giroux. It's like, we traded 2 first-round picks, Joffrey Lupul and at the time, Lucas Spiza, which was a well-regarded defensive prospect, for a 35-year-old Pronger. Okay, Claude Giroux is not Chris Pronger from like the way that he plays, but caliber of player, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. And just like cachet in terms of, name and just what he's done throughout his career
Captaincy,
in the league.
Leadership.
Exactly. Still putting up a point a game.
It's like, how much do you think it would cost to trade for Alexander Ovechkin? Okay?
An
arm and a fucking leg. Even he put up 2 goals the other night. I was telling my roommate, I was like, yeah, there's a chance. And my roommate's 50. So he grew up watching like Wayne Gretzky. I was like, Ovechkin had, has the ability to catch up to Gretzky. And he goes, no, he doesn't. And I like showed him the numbers, and he's like,
wow.
He's like, shit. He's like, I hope that doesn't happen. I'm like, well, it might happen. But like these guys, like Ovechkin is, yes, an all-time generational player.
Yeah, Crosby, if you're trading for any of these all-time
Giroux
greats,
is
a notch below, but still, if you're trading for anybody that's in that sphere, in that realm, you're going to have to give up something to get something of that capacity.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. And one thing we can, make or, put down as a certainty is Giroux will be traded. I'm pretty sure he's getting traded. You're pretty sure he's getting traded. Yeah, where he's going to go, what it's going to be for, we're not sure, but it's going to be something of value. Like the Flyers aren't going to get skimped and get like a decent mid-tier prospect and a second-round pick for him. I don't think anything like that's going to happen.
People thought we got ripped off for Wayne Simmons getting Ryan Hartman, and people laughed at me when I said this. Like, I remember people on Twitter were like laughing at me because like, no, I was like, okay, Ryan Hartman is essentially a late 1st-round pick. Like that's what you got.
Well, he was a late first rounder a couple of years ago.
And what did we say last episode? Where's Ryan Hartman playing? Top line center for Minnesota.
Doing pretty well. So.
Yeah. Again, just like a Scott Lawton, who also has a lot of value. I don't want that in this case. That's not going to help us in the situation we're in. We don't need another Scott Lawton caliber player. What we need is a high potential young guy who, for a playoff team, he's not going to be as effective for them for a playoff run. But in 2-3 years, he probably can be a leader of a team. That's what we need right now. Exactly. So that's what we're swapping. We're giving you our leader for your potential guy in the future.
And like Fletcher and Briere have been saying the last couple of press conferences they've been out there, is high end talent. And I think that's what the Flyers are going to try to look to do with this Giroux trade is add to their prospect pool, make sure they get somebody, who has the high end talent.
So let me ask you this. If the Flyers trade Giroux and Morgan Frost and get Alex Newhook and a 1st-round pick, would you be upset?
Would I be upset? No, I would not.
Right.
I would say sure, because realistically, you're getting Newhook, and then that 1st-round pick, you could say, is the replacement for Frost. So value-wise,
1st-round pick.
Yeah, so value-wise, it's not really much you're missing out on, because Frost was a late 1st-round pick too.
Yep.
So if you look at it from like a logical perspective, you literally have recouped Frost's initial value. So
yeah,
I would say sure. Go ahead.
That's the only way. Like I was thinking of like, okay, well, we'll take Newhook, and you get Frost, so you still get a young, promising young player.
That's actually smart. So that could be maybe something we see. Who knows? I'm interested now to see if maybe Fletcher would do something kind of like that to make sure he gets that higher end, more solidified guy.
Exactly. And again, because if you look, It's like,
or
the
how about
UFA.
this too? How about like I was maybe thinking if you did like I don't know if this would be the same thing because Frost's obviously more value, but a chance of a Giroux Braun package together too. I don't know.
I definitely think it's possible.
Yeah.
The only problem I see with that is that you're taking on a lot of, even if we eat 50%, I guess we could eat 50% of Braun too.
Yeah, you could.
You could do that. Right now, the Flyers have a lot of money as an organization, and they don't need to spend to the cap
at all. Yeah.
So you do have leverage. I really believe the Maple Leafs are going for Justin Braun. Like I truly believe that.
I can 100% see that.
It's literally exactly what they need.
All Leafs talk right now, at least that I've heard, is all about we need a defenseman.
Right-handed defenseman specifically. A guy who can play in front of the net. Now we have two options with there, and they could go for other one. I even actually was listening to SDPN today, the Steve Dangle podcast, and they brought up Justin Braun, and all three of them went, "Oh, Justin Braun." I'm like, "Yeah." I said that before you guys because I was listening to what you were saying. I was like, "Okay, so you need Justin Braun. He's within your wheelhouse." The only problem is they're like, "Oh, some analyst, I don't know." They're like, "Oh, he would be a late round pick." I'm like, "No." I was like, "It's going to cost you more than that, dude.
He's going to be a second.
He's going to be a second round pick." Which again, they're not really in a position. They don't have much to trade.
No, they don't have a lot of assets because they've traded them all away over the last few seasons. So that's why we were saying for Giroux it wouldn't make sense because they just don't have the picks and the prospects.
Yeah, it has to be a team who has the assets to make the deal happen and who are close to a Stanley Cup. Like Tampa Bay, I'm sure would love Claude Giroux. I'm sure they'd find a way to make it work.
They've just wasted all their assets though in the last.
Who are they going to trade?
Runs, exactly.
Who are they going to trade to us? And there are not many teams out there at the bottom of the league that have the assets that are going to want to invest in a 34-year-old player unless they plan on re-signing him, like Montreal. But they're not going to give us the max value. They don't need him for a Stanley Cup run.
Yeah, exactly.
You literally need to find a team in a position of need, and that's what we're going to try to do.
And hopefully Fletcher and Briere can try to do that too.
Yeah, dude.
And Flair.
We'll see. It's going to be a really sad day when he does get traded. I'm not going to be happy about it.
Me too. I'm not going to be very happy, but I mean, for the future of the franchise, it's the best course of action, I would say.
Well, that's why I believe we're also getting a good player because I think Chuck Fletcher knows that, and whatever team we're trading with, they know that too. Yeah. Like, I think the Flyers would rather just re-sign Giroux than to get a second-round pick and a middling prospect for him.
I think if that ended up
they just won't even trade him.
They probably won't trade him.
They won't even trade him because it makes you look horrendous.
Exactly.
Oh, you're like, no. Like
you traded your all-time great of the last, like, decade and a half for
two things who might not make the NHL.
Yeah, for almost nothing, exactly.
No, you're going to be like, if anything, you're going to turn that with the media and be like, "Oh, last second we found a way to come together. We love Claude Giroux. He's part of the history of this team, and we believe, with him here, he can help bring us in the right direction.
And we can build around, him, and he can help build, with the younger players going forward."
Yeah. This isn't Wayne Simmons, and I loved Wayne Simmons. Wayne Simmons was never a franchise caliber player.
Different situation. Also, he wasn't a point a game player still when they were trading him. So.
Never. Claude Giroux is a special player. You look at what the Flyers got for Jake Voracek, right? Like Voracek was making $8 million a year, and we got literally his value was still that high that Columbus was willing to take the extra cap space for Voracek. Giroux is better than Voracek, and on an expiring contract.
They're gonna get a haul. They're gonna get a good package for him. I mean, I'm convinced of that. It's just at this point, what is it gonna be? We'll find out. Obviously.
Yeah. Hopefully next week we have more information for you.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Vasili, let's sign off on this one. Anything that the fans should know about your work?
I am going to probably have a article coming out in the next couple days, actually keying in on a Giroux trade, possible destinations, what the prospects might look like more in depth into that. So keep an eye out for that, everybody.
Awesome, perfect, and got to give a shout out to the sponsor. I forgot to do it again at the top of this podcast. So shout out to Jim Steaks on 3rd and South. Make sure to get a cheesesteak. Feed that hungry side since you're all miserable right now. A little bit of sad eating never hurt anybody. Actually, maybe it did, but don't hurt yourself.
Okay, Jim Steaks, go there.
Yeah. Just eat his cheesesteak. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Like, subscribe, share our stuff out. It's a humongous help. Please comment. We're gearing up for our 100th episode, which is fucking crazy to say. Do plan on doing something a little more special as we get closer. I think we'll be right near the trade deadline. If we did the math, I think the trade deadline is what, end of March?
It's the 21st of March.
21st. So we'll be like a week before.
Yeah,
maybe Giroux will even be traded by then. We don't know.
Oh, look out for a trade deadline extravaganza from us that week.
Yeah. So it'll be all trade talk that entire time.
Which is the most fun. Let's be real.
What else do we have to talk about?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, all right. Thank you again. Like, subscribe, share. We love you. Appreciate you listening. Appreciate you being our, audience. It's fucking awesome to have people listening to us on a regular basis. So thank you very much. Thank you, Vasili. And remember, always stay gritty.